Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the entirely not accidental and totally planned, well in advance time of 9:35 a.m. But that doesn't matter. Joining me is the trader from the West, the man with the Hot Wheels, the man who likes selling a certain hybrid that he won't talk about, Mr. Graham McDonald. Thanks for joining us, Graham.
Morning again, everyone.
And oh man, we've forgotten something. Where's Matthew? No, wait. Matthew's not in today. He is off moving into his first new house. So, round of applause for Matthew and his partner. Well done. Well done. He will be back next week, maybe with a different background. Congratulations to him on that big move. Now, we will get straight into a couple of things, he says, pulling up the list. I mean, how's the last week been for you, Graham? Anything moved much?
No. In fact, I was going to say, I don't know how the rest of the trade's faring out there in dealer land, but I think it's been a really quiet week. I can't speak for new sales, obviously, and look, we know that new sales are driven by different mechanics than us in the dirty old used car trade, but I think it's been a really, really quiet week, and I hesitate to use the words worryingly quiet, but there's been a noticeable drop away in customer inquiry, in walk-ins, finance inquiries. It just feels like things have just gone. And
well, I guess we'll know. I guess we'll know tomorrow morning when we get the stats out. I'm actually going to try and get the stats put up on the website tomorrow. So if you're sitting on the yard on a Saturday and you want to find out, maybe check. I'm guessing about 2 in the afternoon, maybe by the time I get them done. We'll see what we can do in regards to getting some basic information up there for everyone. But yeah, the other thing, of course, they haven't over the last week, and this is totally a weird thing to discuss, and that's daylight savings. We had daylight savings last weekend. Now, Graham, do you go around and read and change all the clocks on the cars in the yard when daylight savings arrives?
Oh, hell no. They barely, they're all stuck on Osaka time as it is anyway. That's one of those little service when the car is sold to do list things rather than beforehand. So everything sitting here is merrily on it's on Japan standard time. I'm sure it is, or somewhere, I don't know. But no.
I guess that's a bigger question for the new car dealers, where they're wanting that slightly more up-to-date, precise offering. Particularly, I guess, when you're talking about your demonstrators, you've got to go and update your demonstrators. I think it's one of the
I'll bet you've brought that up. I bet you now there's about 100 dealers around the country right now with sweaty bottoms going, "We didn't do it," and all running around straight into the sales manager's office and saying, "Quick, change the times! Richard said we've got to do it."
Well, I find it amusing, but I don't think it's more necessarily from the people having to do it in the yard. It's what cars do and don't. So we have our car sitting in the driveway here that's got it's fairly modern. It's brand new Atto 3. Jumped in that yesterday. It automatically updated the time because it's internet connected. It's like so many of the cars are these days. Jumped into the Toyota RAV4 we've got. Still got GPS, fairly well high-tech car. Still got to change the time manually. Come on, Toyota.
That's just user interface, Richard. That's user interface. You've got to get. You're becoming immune to the ownership experience and the tactile sensation of having some degree of ownership of the vehicle that you're driving. And I've got to change my own clock. Oh.
The other reason it came up was I had about the week before, my daughter's daycare teacher came to me and she'd bought a near new SsangYong Tivoli, good little car, and but yeah, she had gone right through the winter with last season's time on the clock because she wasn't sure how to do it. The car didn't need to go back to service yet for the dealer to do it. And she was asking if maybe one of the Auto Sparkies or something in our town would be necessary to go and change the clock. And I said to her, just wait another week, it'll come right.
Well, a small little confession to make there. I hopped into my Ranger a couple of days ago. I thought, oh, it's got the right time again. So, like every 6 months, right, it's going to be correct. So
now that is about the only negative thing I could say about the Toyota RAV4, and everyone knows I am a lover of the electric vehicles. But this is not necessarily an endorsement for Toyota New Zealand, but that RAV4 hybrid that if you order now, I think you're waiting a little bit for. That is a good family vehicle. Sure,
Yeah.
it's hybrid as opposed to fully electric, but it's still pretty darn efficient. I think we're trundling around at about just over 5 litres per 100 kilometres, including quite a bit of open road work, and heaps of space. And I would argue looks a little dated inside, but everything just works really well. Feels built like it was chipped out of a block of granite by Thor. They're pretty darn good all-round vehicles. So I do still appreciate non-electrified vehicles. Just want to make that clear to people. Now,
so here's a question on that, Richard, because my sister went out and bought one when they first arrived in the marketplace, and she waited, I think, 12 months or 9 months or so to get hers, and she loves them, right? But given the waiting lists on Toyota RAV4s right now, are people ordering them because they just hear that there are good vehicles? Let's face it, it's not like you can just go and try one. There's a few demonstrators around. Is this wait list because people just assume it'll be good, or people have got experience of them being? So, I mean, we talk about them being a good car, but how do people know that? Is this one of those vehicles that's just its reputation almost precedes it, and you just order it? You don't drive it, you don't check it, you just say, look, I think I need one of these. And the waiting lists are huge globally as a result. What is it about the RAV4 that makes it just such a hot seller?
Well, I know these things sound the same, but they are very different. And that I think all people order it because they know there's no chance of it being bad. So you're not going to get a bad car. You're not going to have a bad experience. You're not going to have a bad fuel bill. If you're wanting to get into electrification, but you're quite nervous about it, then it's going to. Toyota's tested that. The hybrid system. Toyota's has been around for 20 odd years now. It's not. Sure. Are there cars out there that are more exciting, more dynamic, faster? Sure. Do they come with potential risks? Maybe. I'm not saying they do, but if you go buy a RAV4, or for that matter, pretty much any hybrid Toyota, then your risk level is very, 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 very low. Plus, call it what you like with the Toyota price promise system. On paper, the cars look great value. And they are. I mean, they were even at the higher price and by the time you'd wangled a few things at the dealer. But now I think, if you're looking to shop a car and you go shop that, say that H6 hybrid I was driving a few weeks ago, if you go and shop that against what I've got there, the Toyota's a few grand more expensive. And sure, you could probably get the H6 down even further to have quite a big price gap. But on paper, because of that price promise system, it's a price promise or the transferable pricing. That Honda's the price promise. Sorry, Honda. The gap isn't as big as what perhaps it used to be in the past when you used to have to wangle your price at a Toyota dealer. System was a little controversial when it came in. I think it makes a lot of sense now, particularly when no one's really discounting. So Toyota's kind of in the right position.
Wouldn't it be great to have a product where you just have customers walk in and say, "I'll have that one, please," and I'll wait my 12 months for it? I mean, isn't that just that's dealer nirvana? Could I have one, please? Can I have it in 12 months, please? Do I need to pay all for it, the whole thing now? Yes, okay, thank you. Isn't that just dealer nirvana?
Yeah. And we know that there's been bidding wars for some people trying to, wangle deals and stuff and pay more to get Toyotas for that matter. Interesting to see that. I think that model has been so popular, maybe some used import dealers are taking a bit of risk and laying out big numbers on later model RAV4 hybrids, and particularly the plug-in hybrids out of Japan. I've seen those appearing a little more in yards, and they're at prices that I suspect most of these used car dealers wouldn't normally dabble in. But I think they're putting onto a pretty safe bet when they push the button on that $40,000 bid, or how many million yen that is, for a couple of years old RAV4.
I was going to say more than 40. At last I looked, it was more than 40. Actually, I think you don't get one that's landed for 40. Because that's the thing. The global pricing of these things doesn't matter where you are in the world. They're just worth $1 squillion.
So it's an interesting dynamic. Neeraj and his team have done a great job lining things up in New Zealand. Toyota, I think, is just doing a really good job globally. Whether you criticise them for how fast they are on electrics or not, they will get there. And at the moment, I'm not sure why they're in a rush, because I feel like they think they're doing a great job with what they've got, and they are. Now, on to something slightly more controversial and relating to the used import industry. Waka Kotahi has issued an alert over acid washers. Wakatahi Inter Transport Agency has issued an alert to car dealers regarding concerns over potential structural issues with vehicles imported from Japan that had been given an acid wash. The announcement was made via the Vehicle Inspection Requirements Manual Certification Amendment, detailing rule changes set out to come into effect on October 1, so tomorrow. This amendment specifies that vehicles that have had acid wash treatments should be sent to repair certifiers for assessment, says Wakatahi. These changes will provide stop potential. Something's gone wrong there. Anyway, potentially weaken vehicles from being passed into service without proper assessment. Graham, can you just explain to me what an acid wash is on a used import car?
Well, and effectively, so surface corrosion on vehicles, these are not brand new cars, okay? So let's start with that, not brand new. And you're going to get surface corrosion on anything ranging from rear suspension beams to it could even within the rear, usually the rear structure of the vehicles, okay? So you get surface corrosion. And the easiest way to treat that so that you haven't got an issue is what's called an acid wash, which is effectively a chemical treatment to neutralize the corrosion. I mean, dealers since time immemorial have used the stuff on the yards and on vehicles and repairers as well. It's just a neutralizer.
Is this the old school clean and treat?
Oh, it actually, you know what? It's exactly what it's called. It's clean and treat. Mm-hmm. And so the issue that I've got with this, and I've always got issues with it, you know how it is. I wouldn't be here if I didn't have an issue with something, is this NZTA clearly now have decided that if the process is not correctly applied, there is a very, very small chance or risk that some of the residue, because it's a process of treating and then washing. And if you don't do the correct or go through the correct wash procedure, that at some stage down the track, that could continue a corrosive effect within the metal components of the vehicle. Now, arguably, you might need to wait for 30 years for that to be a particular issue. And one of the things I've always thought is we are dealing in used cars, and we expect their lifespan to be probably anywhere from sort of 10, 15 years on the road in New Zealand, some last out to 20. But we're talking about a process that could be 30 years before it has any negligible effect at all, by which time the vehicle is probably well being done and within the jaws of doom at old Metal Man. So is it overkill? I tend to think it is, and it hasn't appeared to be an issue thus far, and it hasn't been an issue with any structural degradation of the vehicle. So what has been the catalyst for NZTA to apply yet one more layer of what could be called bureaucracy upon the export or import process?
Mm-hmm. Should they, by the sounds of it should be clean, treat, clean?
Effectively,
isn't that what they're reinforcing, is the clean after the treat?
The problem that happens is that anytime you have some sort of what I call a margin call for an inspector to get involved in, but inspectors are, and with all perhaps good reason too, inspectors tend to be famously conservative in making the call because they don't want to make a judgment call on a vehicle. And so I think this is okay, I'll let that through and run the risk of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the track, it comes back to bite them in the bum. And so you end up with refer. And every time an engineer gets their hands on it, and again, I'm not saying all engineers would do this, but is the temptation, because it is a money-oriented stream and pathway, it costs you $700 to $800 for a repair cert on the vehicle as opposed to a couple of $100 or $100 to sort of write the paperwork and send it off. Again, the whole process sets up in motion a cost gravy train, if you like. And at no point in time is someone going to be prepared to stand back and say, look, I think that actually we've got overkill here. Just let it through, it's fine. Or just clean it, it's fine. The incentivization, the financial incentivization for other people to get involved and go through the repair process worries me greatly, because that's an industry in itself that as an importer, you have zero control over. No control whatsoever. You just throw it to the lap of the gods and let people bill you along the way for whatever the result might be. You've got no input to that process.
Mm-hmm. And it is added cost. I mean, what does it cost to run a vehicle past a certifier these days?
Well, I mean, you're starting to figure a repair certifier is about $700 or so, and it can be easily up to $1,000. So you can see why there's concern. And if your business is being a repair certifier, and you make your income out of repair certs on vehicles as opposed to just chucking everything through and saying, I think that's all right. Well, could you blame me for being a little bit skeptical about how the outcomes might go?
Being a little bit pickier. Yeah, no, interesting.
And
Yeah.
from the inspector's point of
Any
view,
thoughts on what kind of volume of vehicles have had a wash, an acid wash?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what stats are there to say that they have or they haven't been. I just don't know, Richard.
And I'm guessing there's certain ones, because I believe Mazdas are known for having a bit of surface rust on their cross members underneath. That's the kind of stuff that would get a clean and treat, or?
Yeah, maybe. Again, I don't know. I mean, Mazdas are notorious for it. Excelas, Atenzas, things like that, the odd CX-5 and Biante. And you'd argue that the process for those, for compliance, if it's just an acid wash, then there's probably a bit more at play. Typical Mazda, if a Mazda exhibits corrosion underneath, it's a bit more of a process than just an acid wash, clean and treat. It actually needs proper looking at. And I'm going to upset some people saying this probably this morning, but if you're importing Mazda product in volume, you probably know this already, you have to have some pretty good processes to deal with underbody corrosion. If it's not picked by your agent who's buying for you in Japan. And then acid wash be danged, it's not going to stop anything at all. You need to have a closer look at what's going on.
Yeah. I've definitely spent some time with a few importers with my head on the concrete at an auction, looking underneath Mazda Excelas.
Yep.
Now, do you think they've given enough notice with this? I mean, we hear about this week, and it's in place on Saturday.
No.
There's going to be some people who are going to get caught with a $700 fee, basically, aren't there?
Well, yeah, or more. So, yeah, what about the stock? Because right now, timelines and stuff, because shipping is such an issue with the vehicles in terms of timelines of boats, you could have stock arriving next week that you bought 5, 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago in Japan, or longer for that. It's already been through its inspection process up there. But what chance did you have? None, zero. A lead-in period, I would have thought, would have been not just courtesy, but surely just common sense. The industry needs time to adapt to these things. Unless you are genuinely trying to snap the industry on something, an NZTA is not telling us something about why they're getting anal about this at this particular point in time, then surely it allowed the industry a chance to lead in and change its processes for the stock order on the way. Cars arriving on October the 1st, they weren't bought on September the 25th.
No. Right, moving on. Suzuki prices set to rise as Clean Car Standard nears. Suzuki New Zealand is set to list some of its prices in response to the introduction of the Clean Car Standard. Speaking to AutoTalk, Suzuki Automobile General Manager Gary Collins noted that some models have already incurred slight price rises due to rising production and freight costs, adding that more increases are on the way. Like most industries, we're experiencing cost increases for production and freight, says Collins. There will also be increases in costs for most distributors in New Zealand from 1st of January 2023 from the Clean Car Standard program. I think there's two aspects here. One is that prices are going up everywhere because of componentry. I know a couple of models that are going up tomorrow by, I think in some cases about 5%. The cost of raw materials has gone up in multiples in the last year. But yeah, Clean Car Standard is definitely coming. How do you think the prices how are the prices holding on the used import market? They're kind of steadily creeping up too, aren't they, Graham?
Well, yeah, they have to. So the issue the industry has at the moment is that it's been a really slow sales month, and so the temptation is to start dropping prices if you could, just to make some stock move. If you're that way inclined as a dealer and you've got inventory issues with the lack of turnover, the first, I suppose, tool in the box is to reduce your prices. Well, you can't, because you can't replace the stuff. And the prices in Japan are remaining stubbornly high, and in some cases, I think, still rising. And so you can't replace it. Therefore, there's the temptation to just drop what you've got and replace it. Prices have been going up for a while, and here we are right now in the paradox as an industry where half the stock in New Zealand will be purchased at the older prices and half the inventory is purchased at arguably the new prices. Where do you price it? Where do you sit it? Do you take a loss on the stuff you just bought to make it sit within the middle of your stock, or do you raise the pricing on the stock order on the yard to match what you're currently replacing it for? And it's a really difficult position to be in as traders. What do you do with your overall stock mix? Because you can't have two cars that are identical sitting there. You bought this one here in June and it's $10,000, and this one over here you bought that in September and it's $13,000. To the consumer, why?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with the Suzuki one is our price rises here, and I don't have the actual detail in front of me, but I'm looking at the notes that Matthew's put together. Apparently, Australia has suffered a far more severe price rise on Suzuki than here. Suzuki New Zealand's had a record year off the back of the fact that pretty much everything, well, a lot of the stuff in their range gets a clean car discount for being small and relatively low emissions. Though they do believe they're going to be hit by the CCD. I wonder if it's a case of that they don't want to be seen to be rising their prices as much as the discounts, but as seen to be kind of profit taking from the discounts coming through. Such a complex situation pricing at the moment on both sides. Now going on to another one, and just to note, if you are interested in the transport industry, and everyone should be, then do jump over to transporttalk.co.nz. We've got our editor down there, Nigel Moffat, at the Transport in New Zealand's annual conference in Invercargill, and he's put out some great coverage from that. Really big, important conference. Transport is so vital to everyone. This trade, any trade, right down to what you're getting in your shops, and people tend to forget about that. And yeah, some great content over there. So Transporting New Zealand's annual conference has kicked off in Invercargill, bringing the road freight industry together to tackle topics around technology, safety, supply chains, workforce challenges, and more. Over 250 representatives of the industry arrived from around the country at the Ascot Park Hotel for the 2-day themed The Road Ahead, the first conference in 3 years for the industry body following COVID-19. It looked at the significant changes looming for the sector over the coming years and the impact this could have on both businesses and the New Zealand economy. Keynote speaker and acclaimed digital technology pioneer Sir Ian Taylor told the conference that societies cannot go backwards. Although it is still important to learn from the past, Taylor quoted a Maori proverb, "The footprints we lay down today create the path for tomorrow." Michael, there was a big, strong discussion there, which I think, again, go to transporttalk.nz. I don't have the detail in front of me, but people should check out, between Michael Wood and National Simeon Brown. And of course, we call it Transporting the NZ's conference because Transporting NZ has actually split from the National Road Carriers and the New Zealand Trucking Association. They were kind of working together, but they are now separate entities. So, look, we won't discuss that one much, but please do check out transporttalk.co.nz for that. Another quick one. Twitter has ceased Russian production and restructuring Moscow operations. Twitter Motor Corporation has issued a public statement on its news website saying it has decided to end vehicle production at its St. Petersburg plant in Russia. A subsidiary TMC company, Hino Motors, is also shelving plans to assemble trucks at a plant under construction in Moscow, which will be sold off after completion of the building, according to the Japan Times. These are just one of a number of brands that have pulled out of Russia. You wouldn't want to be doing business in Russia at the moment. It's. I mean, aside whether you think where your moral compass sits on or political compass sits in regards to the war in the Ukraine, that country's in some trouble at the moment. I mean, protests against the government, conscription, people fleeing the country. It's a bit of a crazy one, and I guess you wouldn't want to. Why would you want to be involved in that?
Well, yeah, there's two aspects. One is the political aspect, like you said, is whether you, which side of the spectrum your political compass sits, whether you support or you don't support. We're not here to argue that. But I just think in terms of business, it's like you said, there's just so much risk of your capital. You think about the conscription currently underway within Russia. If you've got a factory, for example, reliant upon a workforce, and assuming this special operation goes on for another year and they end up with a full-scale mobilization to sort of steamroller across the Ukraine at some stage, what does that do for your workforce as well? I think it's really troubling times for Russia, and it's not just going to be a short-term effect either, it's a long-term effect. And for Toyota, you think about the investment they've made in these plants and effectively just walking away from it, because the other risk that will happen is if conflict gets worse and the political situation gets worse, what could happen in terms of just nationalisation of your plant? What's to stop it from happening? So I think there's some really difficult touch points for the automotive industry there, but globally the backflow is not looking good either.
Yeah, and I think these people who run these car companies are smart people, politically and from a business perspective, and they want out. And you take, for example, Renault. I think Renault had virtually a majority stake in Lada, which is, whatever you think of Lada, the biggest automotive brand in Russia to this day, and I believe they handed back their majority share to the government for a ruble or something like that. They were out like a rocket. The biggest selling brand in the country, and low value products, probably fairly decent profits in it, and they were gone. So that, these guys are taking this pretty seriously. I think for those of us who aren't necessarily that close to the politics of the thing, I think that's a really negative sign about how the world is viewing Russia at the moment. Pretty darn challenging. If you are watching, and there seems to be a couple who have come in at the earlier time, please do wave your hand up or say hello in the comments so that we know who's here. Always lovely to hear from you. Now, the last story today, and absolutely sure to trigger Graham again, is the New Zealand pricing has been confirmed for the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Or for Graham's sake, I'm just going to herefore refer to it to the Mach-E.
There we are. So that's all we needed to do. It's the Ford Mach-E. Problem solved. Thank you.
But isn't Mark a Mustang term as well? Anyway, so Ford Mach-E reservations are open for New Zealand customers with pricing and specifications all of it also available. The Mach-E, coming to New Zealand in early 2023, has a drive-away price starting at $79,990, qualifying for the New Zealand Clean Car Rebate. The complete lineup with pricing and performance is... Hi, Kit. Kit, maybe in comments, if you could tell us if V is mounting a challenge to this acid wash situation, that would be awesome. The complete lineup with pricing performance is the Mach-E rear-wheel drive is $79,990 drive away. That's got a... someone's typed that wrong. 75 kilowatt battery, 440k range, 198 kilowatts of power, and 430 newton meters of torque. Able to reach 100 kilometers from zero in 6.1 seconds. The Mach-E all-wheel drive extended battery from $109,990 plus on-road costs. That gives you a 98.7 kilowatt-hour battery, 450k range, 258 kilowatts of power, and 560 newton meters of torque. It goes 0 to 105.1 seconds. And the Mach-E GT all-wheel drive.
Oh, the GT now.
Yeah, 124,990 plus on-road costs. That gets you a 98.7 kilowatt-hour battery again, 490 kilometers of range, 358 kilowatts of power, and 860 newton meters of torque. And that'll do 0 to 100 in 3.1 seconds. Now, I'm sure you're going to be... Pardon?
That's handy for the school run. Jemima will be there. All those talks.
Yeah, I think that's quicker than... Yep.
Can I just say for a second, I like the Mach-E. Did you hear that? Just anyone watching this right now that knows me.
You just don't like it being called a Mustang.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually a good-looking SUV. If you call it that, is an SUV, let's be honest. It is an SUV. Call it a GT, whatever you like. It's an SUV. I think it's a good-looking car. I think that... For 80 grand entry, well, okay, so you're going to get the poverty pack, and people are probably going to upgrade themselves a wee bit into the next specification level. I'm not sure about the GT. It's a good-looking vehicle. And if you line that up at 80 grand and say, what else can you buy at 80 grand? It's an EV with a bit of pedigree behind it, with the look and the bits and pieces. This should sell really, really well.
So if we do look at that, I mean, realistically, your choices are 80 grand. At around the 80 grand mark in this thing is you could have a Hyundai Ioniq 5 rear-wheel drive with a similar size battery, a Kia. Well, no, actually, no. You wouldn't get into the you get into a smaller battery at that price. You get into a Kia EV6, similar kind of battery and performance and so on and so forth. A Volkswagen ID4 SUV, lower performance, slightly more range. That's kind of your lot. I kind of feel like almost from a presence perspective, this kind of actually lines up into some of the stuff that... you get the Polestar as well. This is quite closely matched, I think, to the Polestar. Maybe I think you get a bit more range in this for that money. Get about an extra 10, 12 kilowatts of battery. So it's not terrible value in the EV space, and I think you're getting a lot of presence. I think presence is what we'll say for your money with that
You get to say you drive a Mach-E when you pull up to the school parking lot.
I think I think the interesting one is, Graham, and people who haven't, we do a weekly live stream for the EV community over at evsandbeyond.co.nz, and Graham was a guest this week, and we were discussing this road trip he does like once in a while, about 950 kilometres over a very short period of time. That Mach-E all-wheel drive at $109,000 would do that with one charge. Pretty darn easy.
There's a challenge, Richard. There's always a challenge. And so, given that I'm not actually an EV heathen, even though you make out that I am, just call it a Mach-E and be done with it rather than the whole Mustang thing. But I know it's too late. We'll call it a Mustang. But you've got to say that $80,000, 90, 100 grand thereabouts. I know it's a lot of money when you think about the context of a motor vehicle in general. But if you're shopping for an EV, I think that's actually really good value, and it's different. It's sufficiently different, and it's. And dare I say it, I think there's still a bit of hesitance towards buying Chinese vehicles in the marketplace as well. This will suit the people that want to have a bit of either what they see as Japanese or American iron, known brand, known service network. They might have been buying cars from the Ford network for years and years and years. Dad bought Falcons back in the 70s from them. And so I think this is a really good pitch from Ford into that space. And my prediction is this will sell really well. I don't know what sort of numbers Ford have allocated to the market here, but I think it'll do really well. And yes, it's good looking, and yes, spot on. Just Mach-E, not Mustang. Actually, you think about it, for 80 grand, I don't think you could get a EcoBoost thing Mustang, regular, like a proper Mustang. I don't think, could you get one of those for 80 grand new now for an EcoBoost? I think they're just hovering around there.
Yeah, just hovering around there. So again, but the performance of the EcoBoost is a little better than the one we're talking about, than the entry level, but not by much, and not on a real world basis. So yeah. Now I don't have it in front of me. I'm just trying to find it. There is actually a car that is pretty much a Mach-E, but not a Mach-E, out of China. But I can't find it. I think it's essentially a replacement for the Mondeo over there. Chinese, same size, but no Mustang branding, and something. Though they do have a Mach-E in China, and they do build it there. I'm unclear if we're getting ours out of North America or China. I guess we'll find out soon. I actually wouldn't be surprised to get it to China, but who knows? It's going to be really interesting getting that car here, and I suspect it could be one of the better selling Ford passenger vehicles, certainly in the initial periods, if they can get the supply. So
supply. Yep, exactly.
Look, we'll finish it up there, and we'll put up. Kit has responded to that comment. He says, "We were not consulted. At the least, we will be asking for evidence to justify their decision." I guess the question, Kit, though, is that it's happening tomorrow, so I hope you've already asked. So yeah, that's going to be something. Right. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us. Sorry for the weird timing. We will hopefully be back to normal time next week, and hopefully we will have our friend Matthew back with us. We'll see you all again later.
In his new house.